The year was 1966 and Steve and Nancy had just graduated from high school. Because Steve was headed to college just 10 miles from home in the fall, he had gotten a good used car from his parents. It was a 1965 Ford with low mileage. Steve had thought that it would be fun to paint it in his school colors so it stood out somewhat in the town. Today the two friends were headed to Boston, approximately 100 miles from their hometown. The ride down Route 2 was a little slow, but it was a pleasant drive with little traffic. The plan was to stop on the way sometime after Gardner. But, as they drove along, the ride seemed to be taking a long time, as a matter of fact a much longer ride than normal. But, the weather was wonderful and they had plenty of time on their hands. They were not supposed to be in Boston until the morning, and a stay in Framingham had been planned. This was before the internet, and so Nancy had been nervous about the drive. They had been promised that as long as they got off at exit 27 they would arrive safely in Framingham. Nancy had watched the signs and was sure that they were on their way. Basically they only had a couple of roads that they needed to take, but they had never gone there alone without either of their parent. When they reached Leominster they stopped to buy a map. Nancy had gone in and bought the map. She was surprised to see Steve standing there shaking his head. The gas in Leominster was almost 50 cents a gallon more than it was in Greenfield. But, Nancy just shrugged her shoulders and opened the map. As she looked for the best route to Framingham she found a route named 495. She had never heard of such a route and was bewildered. Also the radio was playing some very different music. She couldn't find the radio station that she liked and shut it off with disgust. Sure enough, just a few miles down the road they reached 495. They got onto the route, which was very fast and reminded them of the new road in their end of the state 91. The road was very busy and Nancy was becoming nervous. The cars were familiar but seemed to be a little different than the ones that she saw around her town. As they pulled into the motel on Route 9, Nancy and Steve were glad to get into their rooms. They had had a long day and welcomed the warm beds. The next morning the two friends went to Boston and had a great time. As they left the city they once again went down Route 9. But, no matter what they did they could not find Route 495. When they arrived home both of their parents found their story a little unbelievable until 4 years later 495 was built and went directly to the area that Steve and Nancy had explained.